In 1943, during the middle of World War II, canned sardines became one of the cheapest sources of protein in America. Dock workers ate them before sunrise. Factory laborers carried them inside paper-wrapped sandwiches. And fishermen along the East Coast kept tins of sardines stacked inside nearly every boat. At the time, a sardine sandwich wasn't considered strange. It was simply lunch. Long before fast food chains spread across America, sandwiches like this fed millions of working-class Americans every single day. The recipe was incredibly simple. Soft white sandwich bread, sardines packed in oil, thin slices of raw onion, sometimes mustard, sometimes just a squeeze of lemon. Nothing expensive, nothing fancy. But during the 1940s, simple food mattered. Fresh meat was expensive during the war, and many families could not afford it regularly. Sardines were cheap, easy to store, and available almost everywhere. Small grocery stores near harbors stacked entire shelves with canned fish because workers bought them constantly. And over time, the sardine sandwich became part of everyday life in coastal America. The flavor was strong, very strong. The salty fish soaked into the soft bread, while the onions added a sharp bite that cut through the richness. Some people loved it immediately. Others hated the smell before even taking the first bite. But the people who grew up eating sardine sandwiches almost never forgot them, because this sandwich belonged to a completely different America. An America of shipyards, fishing docks, factories, and industrial towns where people worked long physical hours and needed food that was cheap, fast, and filling. Nobody cared how the sandwich looked. Nobody cared about presentation. Workers pressed the sardines onto bread with their hands, wrapped the sandwich in paper, and ate it sitting beside wooden docks, shipping crates, or factory walls before getting back to work. Back then, many coastal towns in America smelled constantly of salt water, engine smoke, wet wood, and fish packed in oil. The sardine sandwich fit perfectly into that world. It was not delicate food. Oil soaked into the bread. Onions fell onto work jackets. Hands smelled like sardines long after lunch was over. And honestly, most workers did not care. They were hungry. That mattered more. For many immigrant families living near the coast, sardines were also familiar food. Portuguese, Italian, and Eastern European communities had been eating preserved fish long before arriving in America, so sandwiches like this felt completely normal inside their homes. Children grew up watching parents open the same small tins at kitchen tables night after night. No recipes, no measuring, just bread, fish, onions, and whatever else the family could afford that week. And because the sandwich was so ordinary, almost nobody imagined it would eventually disappear. But after the war, America slowly started changing. Supermarkets became larger. Television advertising became powerful. Food companies began selling a cleaner and more modern version of American eating. By the 1950s and 1960s, processed lunches became more popular, and the tuna sandwich slowly replaced the sardine sandwich almost everywhere. Tuna had a cleaner image, a milder flavor, an easier smell. Little by little, sardines became associated mostly with older generations and old coastal towns. Hamburgers looked newer, cleaner, more modern. The sardine sandwich started feeling old-fashioned. But in some small towns across America, the sandwich never fully disappeared. Even today, there are still people making it almost the exact same way they did decades ago. Soft white bread, sardines packed in oil, raw onions. Nothing modern added, because for some people, changing the sandwich would feel like changing the memory attached to it. And maybe that is why forgotten foods survive longer than people expect. Not because they are trendy, but because they remind somebody of a place, a family member, or a version of life that no longer exists anymore. And somehow, this simple sandwich managed to survive all the way from that older America into today.